Alright, so the wait is finally over. We officially have some brand new Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree trailer, and my god, what a trailer this was. Of course, also a release date, June 21st, 2024 is going to be one amazing summer day as we're getting one of the biggest DLC in From Software's history. But also tons of new details to discuss about. There's a big interview with the game's director that sheds in more light about what to expect from this massive DLC, as well as some brand new footage to go over. Starting of course with the setting, as the DLC story is set in what's called the Land of Shadow. This is a brand new map, separate from the lands between, and it's actually comparable in size, if not even larger according to Miyazaki, even than the Limgrave area from the base game. And getting here seems to involve a special sort of warp, as you saw from the beginning of the trailer. This involves of course the Mog boss arena with the cocoon and Michaela's arm coming out of it. So this will actually serve as an entry point of some sort to the entire new map. And the new map in terms of structure is going to be quite similar to what we already had in the base game, as in open field maps with large-scale legacy dungeons in between. But this time around, they also made the transition between different zones. As you probably noticed, a lot of them actually have completely different aesthetics, but the transition between them is also going to be a lot better this time around. So a lot of effort has been put into actually making things a lot more dense, a lot more interesting, but also a lot more seamless when it comes to transitioning. It technically occupies the same space as the lands between, as in it is the same universe, but due to something story related that they don't want to spoil just yet, this has been physically disconnected and you'll travel to the Shadow of the Erdtree land as a separate place. Now this is a place imbued with mystery, perilous dungeons, and new enemies, weapons, and equipment, as you will see in just a bit. Apparently the reason of our visit, as many people actually concluded for a long time at this point, is that we're following in Michaela's footsteps. So the player who will be tracing his path and following in his footsteps to supposedly see what's happening in this place. And another axis of the story is also Queen Marika and what she did in the Land of Shadow, which in turn also led to Michaela following in her footsteps over there. So obviously there are going to be some story tie-ins with these two characters. Now, speaking of characters, we do have at least a new one, and that's Mesmer the Impaler. He, of course, looks absolutely insane, and he does seem to use fire/blood incantations, but mostly fire. It does seem to be some kind of new combination that we don't necessarily have. He does have these snakes around him, and it's obviously going to be a challenging fight. The reason for that is because Mesmer himself is also a demigod. So Mesmer, in some of these shots, you can see him standing on one of these throne-like chairs. And if you play the base game, you might recognize that, for example, from the boss room, there's a throne over there in the battle against Morgoth. So this represents the thrones at the base of the Erdtree, and it's supposed to symbolize that Mesmer stands on equal footing to these other demigods and children of Marika who also sat around in these thrones and held the rooms of the Erdtree. So he is an important figure who rivals these other demigods, which is why you should expect him to be a very challenging fight. And as you play the DLC, you will learn a little about why he wasn't featured in the Legends of the Erdtree, in the lands between, and why he's somewhat secluded to this area. But of course, no more details go beyond this. Now, besides him, we also have at least 10 other new boss fights. Some, of course, range from being slightly easier, but others, of course, are going to be a lot more challenging, and a few of them were even mentioned to be on at least the level that Melania was in the base game. So for those hardcore players out there, absolutely yes, there's going to be quite a few challenges awaiting for you, and we have seen quite a number of these designs over here that, in my opinion, look quite stunning. I definitely love this massive pyre-like sort of boss that seems to be out in the open world. Might be quite challenging. It does seem to also feature fire abilities, so we might want something to counter that. Now, like I said, some of these bosses can be encountered in their specific dungeons, but a lot of them also through the open world. We've seen quite a number of them being present in the open world, and one of my favorite designs is this sort of hippo-looking creature that eventually kind of turns into a hedgehog for some reason. Kind of turns out these spikes and then it throws up some of these almost like the Erdtree attack we had on the final boss encounter. So It reminds me a bit of that. I'm totally expecting some of those really annoying shots to land from the sky and us having to constantly just dodge from them. There was also this skeleton horseman fight. It seems to throw some kind of boomerang weapon towards us. I already know that this is going to be annoying, and there have been a few more, like especially this blade dancer in the blue fields is one of my favorite shots as well. It's of course one of those open world areas in which we can seamlessly go into, and yeah, the transitions over here are going to be purely stunning. But others in there too, including some of these really annoying, I'm not even sure what to call them, like tapeworm that bites your head off. Probably that, definitely a creature of nightmare. And finally this oversized lion slash dog. It looks like a dog to me, to be honest, but it does seem to have like two phases. So in the first one you fight with it as normal. It does have a breath attack, but it does seem that on the second phase it turns to lightning damage. So we do have one of the bosses towards the end section of the base game that kind of did something like this. Besides this, we do have, as I've said, a lot of cool new stuff in there in terms of weapons. So we have 8 new weapon categories, completely distinct of the weapons we already have in the base game, from the equipment and the skills we have over there. And I do want to go over some of these because they look really amazing. So for example, we have this shot over here with the user having 2 curved swords, which kind of reminds me a bit of the Bloodhound Fang, but on a two-handed level. So it kind of seems that on the third or second attack it does this sort of side step and then follows up with a nice sort of cross slash. I definitely enjoy the looks of this. Could be very good in PvP. Then we have some throwing daggers, which seem to be better than what there's currently available in the game. It seems that they are faster even than the fan daggers, because it kind of throws the first and then the second one immediately after, as it does seem that a user is dual wielding these daggers right here. So it seems that on the fourth shot it also completely stuns the target, which is something that you can't normally do except maybe with 1 or 2 of the available throwable daggers right now in Elden Ring. But probably the coolest thing, well, there are a few more, but one new thing is there's unarmed melee combat. And we've seen this really awesome looking ninja series of kicks. Not really sure exactly if this is an Ash of War, or if this is a skill, or if this is just something that we can do as a result of equipping an item, but I would definitely love a build that completely centers around just pure melee brawler fighting styles. And there are a few more. We've seen a new type of crossbow, reminds me a bit of one of the older crossbows, I think from Dark Souls 2, maybe I'm wrong on that one, but it was one of the Dark Souls games nonetheless that I remember having something like this. Super rapid fire, sets enemies on fire, so definitely something that you can probably build around, or at least use as a support. Then we have this brand new shout that seems to bring out a bear of sorts, so I'm not really sure exactly what this is going to do for now. Could be another buff, or could be some kind of stun damage, or some other type of breath attack. And finally, the biggest of them all is the Crucible Knight Wings jump attack. If you fought against Crucible Knights, you know how awesome and iconic this looked. Well, it seems that the player can finally get it. And we see it in the fight against Mesmer the Impaler. It also looks like the character in this case wields a brand new type of weapon, which is that shield with a very pointy and spiky end. Could possibly be some kind of shield that might also be great at dealing damage. Who knows? We had quite a number of those in the base game, but we shall see if this also applies bleed and whatnot. And of course, before I forget, I'm pretty sure we also get a new school of magic. We have this sequence right here with some kind of spell magic that also seems to either put enemies to sleep or at least do some kind of AoE attack. It reminds me a bit of Sword of Saint Trina, and at least some of that Slumbering Mist, which also had similar colors, except this time around combined a little bit with some of the moths slash, I guess in this case we have butterflies, that Melania also had. So maybe we learn more of her school of magic, or maybe it's something new from Michaela. I'm not really sure. Definitely let me know down below what's your take on it. In any case, the future for Elden Ring looks really bright, and even though there's no current plan to make a second DLC or a sequel, From Software didn't completely rule out this possibility either, so they do want to keep their options open from some of the interviews that I've read, and it's also possible that in the future we might also get some kind of second DLC over a few more years, maybe. Who knows? Yeah, the option is still over there, and I mean, they could totally turn this into a franchise. Though do keep in mind that J.R.R. Martin wasn't actually involved at all in the DLC story, even though it is set within the same universe and it is with the same characters. He didn't actually write any new material for the DLC, but that could change for maybe a bigger sequel. But besides this, it definitely seems that the game, or well, the DLC is large. It's definitely big, a whole game in and of itself. And yeah, the price is actually really good. I believe it's $40 right now if you just buy the DLC. But if you don't, you can of course also get some of the new collector's editions. So let's go over these a little bit and what to expect from them. Because if you already own the game on the PlayStation 4, you can get the PS5 digital version at no extra cost. If you own the disc version of it, you will just have to have that inserted in your console, and then you can download and play the PS5 digital version. However, you can't do that on the non-disc version of the PlayStation 5 console, as that will not work. So you're gonna have to figure something out, maybe just buy it separately. Whichever edition you get, all of them, as long as you pre-order them, you will get a Ring of Michaela gesture, and besides that, whichever of them you buy, you will get the expansion and or the game, plus also some digital art book and soundtrack for the deluxe edition. But the biggest highlight is of course the new collector's edition. It does look really interesting. It does feature a Mesmer the Impaler statue, which is about 46 centimeters tall, and it does seem to be very well made. Plus like a 40 or so page hand cover art book, some digital soundtrack as well, that Ring of Michaela gesture I was talking about, plus voucher code for the expansion, because you're not gonna get a physical copy and or DLC with the collector's edition. For some reason, collector's editions these days do not include physical copies anymore. But that is pretty much it. Of course, we're gonna cover more in the future, so definitely stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video.